I drove up to my mountain lodge for the first time since my husband died, desperate for peace and silence. What I found instead was my sister's entire family living there like they owned the place. Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee when she saw me and just casually said, "Oh, hey, you're here?" Like I was the guest. Like this wasn't my home. My husband and I built this place with our own hands. We picked every stone for that fireplace, and now his memory was being trampled by people who couldn't even wait until his grave settled before stealing from me. Let me back up. The lodge sits in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, about 3 hours from Charlotte, where I live. My husband David and I bought the land 15 years ago. It was just raw wilderness back then. Every weekend for 5 years, we drove up there and worked. We cleared trees, poured the foundation, framed the walls. David was a carpenter by trade, and this was his masterpiece. 2 bedrooms, a loft, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. He always said this would be our retirement dream. Then came the cancer diagnosis. Stage 4, pancreatic. He fought for 18 months, but last November he lost that battle. I was 42 and suddenly a widow. The lodge became mine, along with everything else. Our lawyer handled the estate, the title transferred clean. I owned it outright, no mortgage, no liens. Just memories soaked into every plank of wood. I hadn't been back since the funeral, couldn't face it. But 8 months later, my grief counselor suggested I needed closure. Face the memories, let myself heal in the place we loved most. So I took a week off work, packed a bag, and made the drive. The first sign something was wrong? Fresh tire tracks in the gravel driveway. Then I saw them. Bikes on the porch. A new doormat that said the Patterson family, even though that's not even their last name. My sister kept her maiden name when she married Mark. I walked up those steps with my heart pounding, used my key, and pushed open the door. The living room looked like a completely different place. Their furniture, their photos on my walls, kids' toys everywhere. The smell of bacon cooking. I heard voices in the kitchen and found my sister Sarah, her husband Mark, their 2 kids, and Mark's parents all sitting around my dining table eating breakfast. They all turned and stared at me like I was the intruder. Sarah recovered first. She smiled this tight little smile and said, "Oh, you're here. We weren't expecting you." I couldn't even speak. I just stood there looking at the spot where David proposed to me, now covered by someone else's ugly rug. Finally, I managed to ask what the hell was going on. Mark stood up, all 6 feet 3 inches of him trying to intimidate me. He said I didn't need the place. I lived in a nice condo in Charlotte. They had kids who needed space and fresh air. Sarah chimed in with this guilt trip about how Mark's parents were getting older and needed a quiet place to retire. She actually used the word selfish to describe me keeping an entire lodge to myself. I asked how they even got in. Sarah didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She said they took the spare key from the hook in my kitchen during the funeral reception. While I was burying my husband, they were planning this theft. They'd been living here for 6 months. 6 months of using David's tools, sleeping in our bed, probably laughing about how clueless I was. I told them to get out immediately. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. He said finders keepers, possession is 9/10 of the law, all that garbage. His father backed him up, saying they'd put work into the place, fixed some things so they had a right to stay. I looked at Sarah, my own sister, the person who held my hand at David's bedside, and asked her how she could do this. She said, "You'll understand when you stop being so emotional about everything." That's when I pulled out my phone and called 911. The sheriff's deputy who responded was a young guy named Officer Chin. He looked uncomfortable as Mark immediately started yelling about harassment and how this was a family dispute, not a police matter. I showed Chin the property deed with my name on it, showed him my driver's license proving I was that person, showed him the title insurance, the tax records, everything. Chin told them they were trespassing and needed to leave immediately. Mark's whole demeanor changed. He got aggressive, stepped close to Chin, started throwing around words like lawsuit and wrongful eviction. Sarah was crying now, begging me to just talk this through like adults. Her kids were scared and confused. Mark's mother was calling me horrible names I won't repeat. Chin called for backup. While we waited, Mark made a show of blocking my car with his truck so I couldn't leave. He told me I'd regret this, that family was supposed to take care of family, that David would be ashamed of me. That last part nearly broke me. I wanted to scream that David built this place for us. Not for freeloading thieves, but I kept my mouth shut and let the law handle it. 2 more deputies arrived. They made everyone gather their immediate belongings and leave the property. No arrests were made because, Chin explained to me quietly, family trespassing cases are complicated. They'd have to prove criminal intent. But he promised they'd file a full report and recommended I get a lawyer immediately. As they packed up their vehicles, Sarah kept trying to talk to me. She said Mom and Dad knew they were here, that everyone agreed it made sense, that I was tearing the family apart over a stupid building. I asked if Mom and Dad knew they stole a key at a funeral. She didn't answer that. They finally left around noon. I stood on the porch watching their taillights disappear down the mountain, then went inside to assess the damage. Our bedroom was trashed. They'd thrown David's clothes in boxes and shoved them in the garage like garbage. His guitar, the one his father gave him, was in a corner covered in dust. I found our wedding album in a kitchen drawer under takeout menus. That's when I completely broke down. Then my phone started ringing. First my mother, then my father, then Sarah again, then aunts and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My mother was hysterical, screaming about how I called the police on my own family. How could I be so cruel? Didn't I care that Sarah's kids were traumatized? I tried to explain that Sarah had no right to be here, but Mom cut me off. She said Sarah told her I'd offered them the lodge, that we'd agreed they could stay here, that I was backing out of my promise. I realized then that Sarah had been lying to everyone for months, creating this narrative where I was the villain. My father got on the phone next. He's usually the calm one, but not this time. He said I'd always been selfish, that David spoiled me, that it was time I learned to put family first. When I tried to tell him the truth, he hung up on me. Over the next week, I got dozens of calls and messages. Cousins telling me I was wrong. Sarah's friends saying I was heartless. Mark's brother threatened me directly, said I'd pay for humiliating his family. Every single person believed Sarah's version of events, because why would she lie, right? We're family. I hired a lawyer on Monday morning. Patricia was a property attorney in her 50s who'd seen everything. I showed her all the documentation, told her the whole story. She got very quiet, then asked if I'd noticed anything odd about how long they'd been there. I didn't understand the question. She explained something called adverse possession. In North Carolina, if someone lives on your property openly and continuously for 7 years, they can actually claim ownership. Sarah and Mark had been there for 6 months. They needed 6.5 more years. Patricia said it was possible they were trying to run out the clock, establish residency, then take the property from me legally. I felt sick. Then came the final violation. 2 days after they left, I drove back up to check on things. Someone had been there. Windows were smashed. The sliding glass door was shattered. David's guitar was snapped in half. "Bitch!" was spray painted across the living room wall. I called Chin immediately. He came out, took photos, collected evidence. He told me the vandalism happened the night after the eviction. I knew it was Mark, and I decided right then that I was done being the victim. Patricia filed for a restraining order and a civil lawsuit for damages, trespassing, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The restraining order hearing happened fast. Within 2 weeks, I was sitting in a Buncombe County courtroom watching Mark smirk at me from across the aisle. Sarah looked miserable, but she sat beside him. Their lawyer was some guy Mark went to high school with, clearly out of his depth. My lawyer, Patricia, presented everything. The property deed, the stolen key admission, the police reports from both the eviction and the vandalism. Officer Chin testified about Mark's aggressive behavior and the threats he made. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Henderson, listened carefully and granted a temporary restraining order. 500 feet minimum distance, no contact of any kind. Mark's smirk disappeared, but the real war was the civil case, and that took 3 months to get to trial. During discovery, Patricia found something that changed everything. Sarah had a folder on her laptop labeled Lodge Project. Inside were screenshots of North Carolina adverse possession laws, articles about squatters' rights. a timeline calculating exactly when they could file for ownership, emails between Sarah and Mark going back to when David was still alive, discussing how they could make use of the property once he was gone. Reading those emails destroyed me. My sister had been planning this while I was holding my dying husband's hand. While I was choosing caskets and writing obituaries, she was researching how to steal from me. The earliest email was dated 4 months before David died. Mark had written, "Once the old man kicks it, we move fast before she knows what hit her." Patricia also discovered that Mark had lost his job 8 months before they moved into the lodge. He'd been fired for stealing from his employer, a construction company in Asheville. They were broke, facing eviction from their apartment, drowning in credit card debt. The lodge wasn't about family bonding or Mark's parents needing peace. It was about free housing and a long-term plan to steal an $850,000 property. Sarah had been reluctant at first, according to the emails. She'd written back, "I don't know if I can do this to her." But Mark had pressured her, convinced her I wouldn't care, that I had plenty of money from David's life insurance, that family should share resources. By the time they stole that key at the funeral, Sarah was all in. The trial was brutal. My parents showed up to support Sarah. That hurt worse than anything. I had to sit there and watch my own mother testify that I was vindictive and greedy, that Sarah deserved the lodge because she had children to raise. Dad said David would have wanted the family to use the property. Neither of them knew about the emails yet. Sarah took the stand and lied under oath. She claimed I'd verbally agreed they could stay there, said we'd had multiple conversations about it, that I'd told her I never wanted to go back because of painful memories. She cried, played the struggling mother card, said her kids loved it there and begged me not to rip them away from their home. Her lawyer painted me as a wealthy, childless widow who was being cruel for no reason. Then Patricia presented the evidence. The emails, the adverse possession research, the timeline, Mark's criminal record for theft, their financial desperation, the vandalism photos with Mark's fingerprints confirmed by police. Sarah's face went white. The courtroom went silent. Even their lawyer looked shocked. Mark tried to claim the emails were taken out of context, that they were just joking around, but there were dozens of them, spanning months, with detailed plans. Patricia asked him directly if he'd called my husband the old man while he was dying. Mark refused to answer. She asked if he'd smashed my windows. He said he wanted a lawyer. Too late for that. The turning point came when Mark's own parents turned on him. His mother took the stand and admitted Mark had told them a completely different story. He'd said I was letting them all live there rent-free as a favor. They had no idea about the theft or the scheme. His father testified that after the eviction, Mark had been talking about burning the lodge down for the insurance money. The older man was crying, humiliated that his son had dragged their name through this. Judge Henderson was clearly furious. She ruled in my favor on every count. Mark and Sarah were ordered to pay $50,000 in damages, covering the vandalism repairs, legal fees, my time off work, and emotional distress. The temporary restraining order became permanent. They were both banned from coming within 500 feet of me or the property. If they violated it, they'd face criminal charges. Sarah tried to approach me in the courthouse hallway afterward. A bailiff stopped her, reminded her about the restraining order. She was sobbing, saying she was sorry, that Mark had manipulated her, that she never meant for things to go this far. I looked at her and said the only thing I could think of. "You researched how to steal from me while our husband was dying. Don't you ever contact me again." Then I walked away. My parents finally got the full story from other family members who'd been in the courtroom. They tried calling to apologize. I didn't answer. They'd chosen to believe Sarah's lies without even asking for my side. They'd testified against me in court. Some betrayals you don't come back from. The aftermath was messy. Sarah and Mark's marriage imploded within 6 weeks. The financial stress of the judgment broke them. They'd already been struggling, and now they owed me $50,000 they didn't have. Mark blamed Sarah for the whole thing, said she should have known they'd get caught. Sarah blamed him for pushing the scheme in the first place. Their divorce was finalized 8 months later. She got the kids, he got nothing. My parents kept trying to reach out. Mom sent letters. Dad showed up at my condo once. I had him removed by building security. They claimed they didn't know Sarah had lied, that they were just trying to support their daughter, that family should forgive. But here's the thing about forgiveness. It requires remorse, and more importantly, it requires trust. They'd proven I couldn't trust them. In a crisis, they'd chosen her without question. The extended family fractured. Some people figured out the truth and reached out to apologize. Others still believed Sarah's victim story because she's good at playing that role. I blocked everyone who'd sent me hateful messages, cut them all off clean. Life got quieter, lonelier in some ways, but peaceful. Sarah tried multiple times to contact me through mutual friends. Each time, I reminded those friends about the restraining order and that I'd involve police if it continued. Eventually, she stopped. Last I heard through the grapevine, she moved back in with our parents. She works retail now, struggling to make child support payments on top of the judgment debt. I spent the next spring renovating the lodge, replaced those broken windows with better ones, repainted every wall, bought new furniture that was mine, not tainted by their presence. I started going up there 1 weekend a month, then 2, then almost every weekend. The place that had scared me with grief became my sanctuary again. I think about David a lot when I'm there. Sometimes I talk to him out loud, tell him about the view or the new deck I built. I think he'd be proud that I fought for what was ours, that I didn't let them steal his memory along with his property. And I think he'd understand why I had to cut out the people who tried to take it from me, even if they were blood. Family isn't supposed to betray you like this, but sometimes the people closest to us cause the deepest wounds. If you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this one resonated with you, hit that subscribe button for more real stories about standing up to toxic people, setting boundaries, and choosing your own peace over family pressure. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that message today.
There's a particular kind of invisibility that comes with being the youngest child in a family of overachievers. You become background noise, present but not particularly noticed, discussed but not particularly understood. I'd been invisible to my family for so long that I'd stopped trying to be seen. My older brother Christopher was a federal prosecutor in Manhattan, the kind who made headlines prosecuting white-collar criminals and corruption cases. Every Sunday dinner included updates on his latest courtroom victory, his media appearances, his rising profile in legal circles. Mom kept a scrapbook of his newspaper mentions. My sister Victoria ran a successful chain of boutique fitness studios across the Northeast. She'd been featured in Entrepreneur magazine, spoken at business conferences, built something tangible that our parents could explain to their friends in one sentence. Then there was me, Daniel, age 35, the one who works at hotels. Daniel's in hospitality, Mom would say at her garden club meetings, her tone suggesting I served continental breakfast at a budget motel. Not glamorous, but he seems happy enough. The truth was considerably more complex, but I'd learned years ago that complexity didn't interest them. They wanted simple narratives, clear hierarchies, accomplishments they could brag about at cocktail parties. Federal prosecutor? Perfect. Fitness entrepreneur? Excellent. Hotel worker? Well, someone has to do those jobs. Today's family gathering was Victoria's engagement party, a lavish affair at our parents' estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was marrying another entrepreneur, someone equally successful and photogenic, and the party reflected the appropriate level of celebration for the family's golden child. I'd arrived early to help with setup, which seemed to surprise everyone. Daniel, you didn't need to come so early, Mom had said, eyeing my simple navy suit with faint disapproval. You must have taken time off work. I hope they don't dock your pay. I arranged my schedule, I'd replied, which was true. I'd rescheduled 2 board meetings, postponed a property acquisition negotiation in Singapore, and delayed a conference call with the expansion team in Dubai. But those details seemed unnecessary to share. The party was in full swing by late afternoon. 200 guests scattered across the manicured grounds, champagne flowing, a string quartet playing near the garden. Victoria held court by the pool, radiant in a designer dress, her fiancé beside her looking appropriately successful and proud. I was arranging flower centerpieces on one of the tables, actually helping since the catering staff was overwhelmed, when I heard Dad's voice behind me. Richard. Margaret. So glad you could make it. Dad's booming welcome carried across the lawn. He was greeting the Hendersons, old family friends who owned a small chain of car dealerships. Wouldn't miss it, Richard Henderson replied. Victoria's engagement is wonderful news. And how's the rest of the family? This was the part I'd learned to anticipate. The family status report, where Dad would catalog his children's accomplishments in descending order of impressiveness. Christopher's doing brilliantly, just closed a major corruption case. Made the Times and everything. Victoria, well, you can see how successful she is. The fitness studios are expanding into Massachusetts next quarter. And your youngest? Daniel, isn't it? Pause. The subtle hesitation that meant Dad was calibrating how to present me. Daniel works at the Hilton. In hospitality. Oh, hotel management? Margaret Henderson sounded interested. That's a solid career. Not exactly management, Mom interjected, appearing beside Dad with fresh champagne. She lowered her voice to a confidential tone, as if sharing something vaguely embarrassing. He's in housekeeping. But it's honest work and the benefits are good. Not everyone can be an overachiever. I continued arranging flowers, my hands steady despite the familiar sting. Housekeeping. They genuinely believed I worked in housekeeping at a Hilton hotel somewhere. Not which Hilton, not in what capacity. Just a vague understanding that I worked for the Hilton brand in some menial capacity that didn't require further explanation. Well, hospitality is important, Richard said charitably. Someone has to keep those hotels running. Exactly, Dad agreed. Daniel's always been more hands-on. Less ambitious than his siblings, but he seems content with his life. We've accepted it. They'd accepted it. How generous of them. The conversation drifted to other topics and I finished the centerpiece arrangement. One of the actual catering staff, a young woman named Maria who I'd been helping, gave me a sympathetic look. Your family doesn't know, do they? She whispered. Know what? Who you are. What you actually do. She gestured subtly at my wrist where a Patek Philippe watch caught the afternoon light. That's a $60,000 watch. Housekeeping staff don't wear $60,000 watches. I smiled slightly. They see what they expect to see. Anything else doesn't register. That's insane. That's family. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the third time in 10 minutes. I'd been ignoring it, trying to be present for Victoria's celebration, but the vibrations were becoming insistent. I pulled it out discreetly and glanced at the screen. 3 messages from Margaret Chin, my chief financial officer. Daniel, we need to finalize the London acquisition numbers before the board meeting. Can you review the updated projections? Also, the Wall Street Journal is running the profile tomorrow. They want a final quote from you about the expansion strategy. And the Dubai team needs approval on the construction timeline. They're waiting. I was typing a response when another message appeared. This one from James Rodriguez, my executive vice president of operations. Chairman, I know you're at a family event, but we have a situation in Tokyo. The regulatory approval hit a snag. The legal team needs guidance and the Japanese partners are getting nervous. Can you join a call? I sighed and glanced at my watch. The board meeting was scheduled for 5 p.m., in exactly 43 minutes. I'd planned to slip away quietly, take the helicopter from the nearby airfield, make it to Manhattan with time to spare. But the timing was getting tight. I was calculating logistics when Christopher appeared, martini in hand, his federal prosecutor confidence radiating like a force field. Daniel, actually helping the caterers? That's very hands-on of you. He wasn't being mean exactly. Just patronizing in the way that came naturally to him. Must be all that hospitality experience, right? Knowing how events work. Something like that. You know, if you're interested in advancing your career, I have a friend who works in hotel management. Real management, I mean. Corporate level. He might be able to get you an interview, help you move beyond the housekeeping thing. You're 35. Probably time to think about climbing the ladder. I continued straightening napkins. I appreciate the thought, but I'm pretty settled in my current position. Are you though? I mean, housekeeping is fine for someone starting out, but you've been doing it for what, 10 years now? Don't you want more? Leadership? Real responsibility? Before I could respond, Victoria swept over with her fiancé Marcus in tow. She looked radiant and slightly drunk, the perfect combination for an engagement party. Danny, my baby brother, helping make my party perfect. You're so sweet. She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark. Marcus, this is Daniel. He's the practical one in the family. Works at a hotel, keeps his feet on the ground while the rest of us chase big careers. Marcus shook my hand with the firm grip of someone trying to establish dominance. Hotel work, huh? That's solid. Not flashy but steady. Respect. Thanks, I said because what else was there to say? You should talk to my cousin, Marcus continued, warming to his subject. He's in hospitality management consulting. Makes serious money helping hotels optimize operations. If you're interested in breaking out of housekeeping, he could give you some pointers. Maybe help you transition into a real career path. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, Daniel, we really need you. The board is assembling early. Some concerns about the Tokyo situation that require chairman input. I glanced at the time. 4:23 p.m. I needed to leave in the next 10 minutes or I'd be late, and being late to my own board meeting would raise questions I didn't want to answer. I actually need to head out soon, I said, pulling my keys from my pocket. Work thing. Victoria laughed. Work thing? On a Sunday? What, is there an emergency with the towels? Christopher chuckled. Maybe someone important checked in and they need extra housekeeping staff. Daniel to the rescue. They were all laughing now. Not cruelly but with the casual dismissiveness of people who genuinely believed I was beneath them professionally. Mom and Dad had drifted over, drawn by the laughter. What's so funny? Mom asked. Daniel has to leave for a work emergency, Victoria explained, still giggling. Apparently the Hilton needs him urgently. On a Sunday? Dad frowned. That's inconsiderate of them. You should stand up for yourself, Daniel. Don't let them take advantage just because you're in a support role. I really do need to go, I said, checking my watch again. 4:25 p.m. Getting tight. What kind of emergency could housekeeping possibly have? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Like, is someone important checking in? A VIP who needs their room prepped. Before I could answer, I heard rapid footsteps on the flagstone path. I turned to see Margaret Chin speed walking across the lawn in a business suit and heels, her expression tense but professional. She was carrying her tablet and looked slightly out of breath. This was not good. Margaret knew I was at a family event. She wouldn't have come in person unless something was genuinely critical. Mr. Chairman, she said as she approached, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet section of lawn. I apologize for interrupting, but the board meeting starts in 5 minutes and we have several urgent matters that require your immediate attention before we convene. The silence that followed was profound. Mom's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Dad's expression froze mid-smile. Christopher's martini actually tilted dangerously, nearly spilling. Victoria made a small choking sound. Marcus's face went through several interesting color changes. Chairman. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. What does she mean, Chairman? Margaret finally seemed to notice that she'd walked into something. She looked at me, then at my family, then back at me. Oh. Do they not know? Know what? Mom asked, her voice rising. Daniel, what is she talking about? Why is she calling you Chairman? I took a breath. Years of careful privacy, of letting them believe what they wanted to believe, ending in this moment on Victoria's engagement party lawn because my CFO needed urgent decisions about a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. Margaret Chin, meet my family. Family, this is Margaret Chin. She's the Chief Financial Officer of Cascade Global Hospitality Group. Cascade Global? Christopher's prosecutor brain was already working, connecting dots. The hotel conglomerate? They own like 20 different brands worldwide. 23 brands actually, Margaret corrected. Across 47 countries. 387 properties. We're the third largest hospitality group in the world by revenue. What does that have to do with Daniel? Victoria asked, her voice small. Margaret looked at me, silently asking permission. I nodded. Daniel is the founder and chairman of the board, she explained. He built the company from the ground up over the past 12 years. Started with a single boutique hotel in Boston, expanded through strategic acquisitions and organic growth. He's been chairman and CEO for the past 8 years, though he transitioned the CEO role to operational leadership 2 years ago to focus on expansion strategy. The silence was so complete I could hear the string quartet from across the lawn, now playing something Mozart that felt absurdly inappropriate for the moment. But he works in housekeeping, Mom said weakly. At a Hilton. He said he works at the Hilton. I said I work in hospitality, I corrected gently. You decided that meant housekeeping at a Hilton. I never actually specified. Cascade owns the Hilton brand? Dad asked, his face pale. No, Margaret said. We're a separate entity. Though we are in acquisition talks with Hilton International about purchasing several of their European properties. That's actually one of the items on today's board agenda. Marcus had found his voice. You're buying Hilton properties? As in multiple hotels. How much money are we talking about? The European portfolio we're discussing is valued at approximately 2.3 billion euros, Margaret said matter-of-factly. Though we're negotiating down. Daniel thinks we can close at 2.1. Christopher made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Billion. With AB. The Tokyo situation is more pressing, Margaret continued, turning back to me and falling into professional mode because that's what we did when there were actual crises. The regulatory approval hit complications. The partners are threatening to pull out, which would kill the entire Pacific expansion strategy. Legal thinks we need to make concessions, but I disagree. I think they're bluffing and we should hold firm. What's the specific sticking point? I asked, my mind automatically shifting into work mode despite the chaos of the moment. Environmental compliance on the construction permits. They want us to use local contractors exclusively, which would add 18 months to the timeline and blow the budget by 40%. Counter with hybrid approach. 60% local contractors, 40% are established firms, with technology transfer guarantees. That gives them the local employment optics they want while keeping us on timeline and budget. Smart, she said, typing notes on her tablet. I'll brief legal. What about the London acquisition numbers? The projections look solid but conservative. Increase the revenue estimates by 12% in year 2. The King's Cross location will outperform based on the commercial development pipeline we're seeing. And push for better terms on the debt financing. Our credit rating just improved and the banks know it. Got it. And the Wall Street Journal quote. I thought for a moment. Something about strategic growth in emerging markets while strengthening presence in traditional strongholds. The usual expansion strategy messaging. Have PR draft options and I'll review during the helicopter ride. Helicopter. Victoria's voice cracked. You have a helicopter? Company helicopter, I clarified. Shared asset. More efficient than fighting Manhattan traffic for board meetings. Dad had sat down heavily on a nearby chair. You own a hospitality conglomerate worth billions of dollars. Own is a strong word. I'm the majority shareholder and chairman, but we have institutional investors, private equity partners, the usual structure for a company our size. How big? Christopher asked. His prosecutor instincts had recovered, and now he was in cross-examination mode. What's the company worth? Margaret pulled up data on her tablet. Current market cap is approximately 17.4 billion. Though we're private, so that's based on our last funding round valuation. If we went public, which we're considering next year, analysts estimate we could hit 25 to 30 billion depending on market conditions. Mom made us sound like a wounded animal. But you said you worked at the Hilton. For years you said you worked at the Hilton. I said I worked in hospitality, I repeated. The one time I mentioned specifics, about 4 years ago at Christmas, I said I was overseeing property acquisitions for a multinational hotel group. Dad said that sounded like boring business travel and changed the subject to Christopher's latest trial. After that I stopped trying to explain. The Patek Philippe, Maria the caterer whispered, still standing nearby with her tray. I knew it. Margaret checked her watch. Chairman, we really do need to go. The board is assembling and you have 3 items requiring pre-meeting approval. The helicopter is waiting at the airfield. I looked at my family, all of them frozen in various states of shock and confusion. Mom's face had gone pale. Dad looked like he might be having a medical emergency. Christopher's prosecutor confidence had evaporated into pure bewilderment. Victoria had tears in her eyes, though whether from shock or embarrassment I couldn't tell. I'm sorry to interrupt your party, Victoria, I said sincerely. Your engagement is important and I wanted to be here to celebrate. But I do have actual responsibilities that can't wait. You let us think you were nobody, she whispered. For years. You let us think you were a failure. I let you think what you wanted to think. There's a difference. Every time I tried to explain my actual work, you talked over me or made assumptions or offered career advice about moving up from housekeeping. Eventually I realized you weren't interested in my reality. You had a narrative that made you comfortable and contradictory information just didn't register. But we're your family, Mom said, her voice breaking. Why wouldn't you tell us? I tried. You didn't listen. So I stopped trying. Marcus, Victoria's successful entrepreneur fiancé who'd offered to connect me with his hospitality management consultant cousin, had gone very quiet. He was staring at me like I'd just revealed I was a different species. You're Daniel Ashford, he said slowly. You're the Daniel Ashford. The one who revolutionized boutique hotel acquisitions. The one who pioneered the experiential luxury model. I read a case study about your expansion strategy in my MBA program. That's flattering, I said, because what else could I say? I offered to have my cousin give you career advice. My cousin who does hospitality consulting. I offered to help you break into the industry. His face was cycling through mortification. Oh my God. Margaret touched my elbow. Chairman, I hate to push, but we really are out of time. The board is assembled. If we don't leave in the next 60 seconds, you'll be late to your own meeting. I nodded and turned to my family one final time. We'll talk later. Right now, I have a company to run, a Tokyo crisis to manage, and a London acquisition to close. Enjoy the party. Victoria, congratulations on your engagement. I'm genuinely happy for you. Daniel, wait, Dad started. But Margaret was already moving and I fell into step beside her. My security detail, 2 men who'd been discreetly positioned at the edge of the property, invisible to my family, materialized and formed up around us as we walked toward the waiting car. Behind us, I could hear voices rising. He owns a $20 billion company? Why didn't we know? All those times we gave him career advice. The housekeeping thing. Oh my God, we told everyone he worked in housekeeping. Did you see his watch? That's a Patek Philippe Grand Complications. Those cost more than my car. The black Mercedes S-Class was waiting at the end of the driveway, driver ready. We slid into the back seat and the car pulled away smoothly. Through the rear window, I could see my family clustered on the lawn, staring after us like spectators at a car accident. That was dramatic, Margaret said mildly, opening her tablet. Should I have announced you differently? How were you supposed to know they didn't know? I pulled out my phone and started reviewing the pre-meeting briefing materials. They've spent a decade not asking questions about my actual life. This was inevitable. Still, finding out your son owns a global hospitality empire at a garden party must be jarring. They'll adjust. Or they won't. Right now, let's focus on Tokyo. Walk me through the negotiation points. The drive to the airfield took 12 minutes. The helicopter, a Sikorsky S-76 corporate model, comfortable but not ostentatious, was prepped and ready. We lifted off as the sun began setting over Connecticut, banking toward Manhattan as Margaret briefed me on the remaining board agenda items. The flight took 18 minutes. I spent them reviewing acquisition data, approving operational changes and drafting response strategies for the Tokyo situation. By the time we touched down on the helipad atop our corporate headquarters building in Midtown, I'd made 7 major decisions affecting operations across 3 continents. The boardroom was on the 48th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a table that sat 24 executives and board members, state-of-the-art presentation technology. 12 board members were already assembled, along with key executives from various divisions. They stood as I entered, not out of ceremony but out of respect. These were serious people, former hotel CEOs, private equity partners, real estate moguls, finance experts. People who'd built and sold companies, who understood what it took to create something from nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Thank you for assembling on short notice. We have several time-sensitive matters to address, starting with the Tokyo regulatory situation. Margaret, walk us through the current status. The meeting ran for 2 hours. We resolved the Tokyo crisis with the hybrid contractor approach I'd suggested. The Japanese partners accepted it within 20 minutes of our counterproposal. We approved the London acquisition with revised revenue projections. We discussed the Wall Street Journal profile and aligned on messaging. We reviewed Q3 performance across all divisions and approved strategic initiatives for Q4. By 8 p.m., we'd addressed every critical item and adjourned. Several board members lingered to discuss specific issues, but by 8:30, the room had cleared except for Margaret and James Rodriguez, my EVP of Operations. Productive meeting, James said. The Tokyo resolution was elegant. And the London numbers look solid with those revised projections. We should celebrate, Margaret suggested. Successful crisis management, major acquisition approval, strong quarterly performance. That's a win worth acknowledging. My phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting. Texts and calls from family members that I'd ignored. Now in the quiet of the emptying office I finally looked at them. 47 missed calls. 63 text messages. Multiple voicemails. Christopher, we need to talk. Please call me back. Victoria, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Nobody knew. Why didn't you tell us? Mom, Daniel please. We feel terrible. We had no idea. Please call us. Dad, son, I owe you an apology. Several apologies. Can we talk? Even Marcus, Victoria's fiancé. Mr. Ashford, I apologize for my comments. I had no idea who you were. Please accept my sincere apologies. I stared at the messages for a long moment, feeling nothing in particular. Not anger, not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a sort of tired inevitability. Your family? Margaret asked quietly. Realizing they've spent a decade being wrong about me. Processing. Panicking. Are you going to call them back? Eventually. Not tonight. James checked his watch. It's Sunday night and we've been in crisis mode all day. You should go home. Get some rest. The family stuff will still be there tomorrow. He was right, of course. But home was a penthouse apartment in Tribeca that my family had never visited, that they'd assumed was a small rental when I'd mentioned living in Manhattan. Going home meant being alone with the fallout of a revelation I'd never intended to make. I think I'll stay and work for a while, I said. Still have some things to catch up on. Margaret and James exchanged glances, the kind of look that said they understood what I really meant. That I was avoiding, processing, not ready to deal with the personal chaos. Don't stay too late, Margaret said gently. Even chairmen need sleep. They left and I was alone in the silent office. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered below. Millions of lights, millions of lives, a city that never stopped moving. Somewhere out there in Connecticut, my family was probably still talking about me, about the revelation, about how they'd missed something so fundamental about my life. But here, in this quiet office overlooking the city, I was just Daniel Ashford. Chairman of a company I'd built from nothing. A person they'd never bothered to know. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from Christopher. I spent 10 years giving you career advice. I told the chairman of a multi-billion-dollar company that he should be more ambitious. I'm never going to forgive myself for this. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed a response. You gave me advice based on who you thought I was. That says more about your assumptions than my reality. We'll talk when I'm ready. Not tonight. I sent it and silenced my phone. Tomorrow I'd deal with family. Tomorrow I'd have the uncomfortable conversations and accept the awkward apologies and try to rebuild something honest from years of misunderstanding. But tonight I had work to do. A company to run. Decisions to make. A life they'd never understood and probably never would. I pulled up the Q4 strategic planning documents and got to work. The family drama could wait. The actual job, the one they dismissed as housekeeping, came first. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, embossed letters on cream cardstock. Patricia Morrison cordially invites you to celebrate 25 years of the Riverside Garden Club. My mother had called the same day. Michael, I'm having a party, she'd said without preamble. June 15th. You should come. Should I? It would mean a lot to me. All my friends will be there and I'd like them to meet my son. What she meant was, I'd like to show my friends I have a son, even if he's not the son I wanted. I was 29 years old and my mother had been disappointed in me for at least 20 of those years. The disappointment had started early, when I chose state school over Princeton, when I majored in mathematics instead of law, when I moved to a studio apartment in Queens instead of staying in Greenwich. I'll be there, I told her. Now, standing in the marble foyer of my parents' house on the Connecticut shoreline, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Through the French doors I could see the party in full swing. Women in designer dresses, men in blazers and khakis, champagne flutes catching the afternoon sunlight. Michael. My sister Amanda appeared at my elbow, immaculate in a white linen dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. You actually came. Mom invited me. She invited you out of obligation. There's a difference. Amanda looked me over with barely concealed disdain. Is that what you're wearing? I glanced down at my khakis and button-down shirt. What's wrong with it? Nothing if you're going to a job interview at H&R Block. These are Mom's closest friends, Michael. The Vanderbilts are here. The Ashworths. Catherine Rothschild flew in from London. I'll try not to embarrass you. Too late for that. She sighed dramatically. Just try to keep a low profile, okay? Don't mention your night job. It's humiliating enough that you work in janitorial services without you broadcasting it to Greenwich society. She swept away before I could respond, leaving me standing alone in the foyer. Through the windows I could see my mother holding court on the terrace, surrounded by her friends. She was laughing at something, her hand resting on the arm of a distinguished-looking man I didn't recognize. I stepped outside into the June heat. The garden was spectacular, Mom's pride and joy, maintained by a team of professional landscapers. White roses climbed trellises, hydrangeas bloomed in massive clusters, and a string quartet played softly near the pool house. Michael. Mom spotted me immediately. Her smile was bright but didn't quite reach her eyes. Everyone, this is my son Michael. The group turned to look at me with polite interest. There were 8 of them, women in pearls and men with practiced handshakes. Michael works in the city, Mom continued, her tone carefully neutral. He has a very unique schedule. What do you do, young man? Asked the distinguished gentleman, extending his hand. I'm Robert Ashworth. I shook his hand. I manage investments. Investments? He brightened. Which firm? Before I could answer, Mom laughed. A tinkling, nervous sound. Oh, Michael's being modest. He works in facilities management. Office buildings mostly. Facilities management? One of the women, dripping in diamonds, looked confused. That's quite a pivot from investments. He cleans offices at night, Amanda said, appearing with a champagne flute in each hand. She gave one to our mother. It's all he can handle, really. Michael was never very ambitious. The group's interest evaporated instantly. Polite nods replaced engaged expressions. Someone mentioned the weather. The conversation moved on. I stood there for a moment, then quietly excused myself and walked toward the pool house. Inside, away from the party, I pulled out my phone. 47 new emails in the past hour. 3 from my chief investment officer, 2 from my legal team, 1 from my accountant marked urgent. I was responding to the most critical messages when Mom found me 20 minutes later. There you are, she said, slightly breathless. Michael, you can't just disappear. People will think you're rude. People think I'm a janitor. I doubt they'll notice if I'm here or not. Her face tightened. Don't be dramatic. There's nothing wrong with honest work. No, there isn't. But you're ashamed of it anyway. I'm not ashamed. I just wish you'd applied yourself more. Your father and I paid for your education. At a state school, yes. Because Princeton was too expensive for someone with my grades. If you'd studied harder. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in mathematics and economics. And look where it got you. Cleaning offices. She shook her head. Your sister graduated from Yale and went straight to Goldman Sachs. She makes $400,000 a year. She has a beautiful apartment in Tribeca. She dates a neurosurgeon. I'm aware of Amanda's accomplishments. You email me her achievements quarterly. I'm just saying you could have done more with your life. You're 29, Michael. At your age, your father had already made partner at his firm. My phone buzzed. A text from James, my CFO. Bloomberg wants statement on Q2 performance. Up 34%. Thoughts? I silenced the phone. Are you even listening to me? Mom asked. Every word. I'm a disappointment. I haven't lived up to my potential. Amanda's perfect. Did I miss anything? Don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being accurate. She studied me for a long moment, her expression softening slightly. I worry about you. You're alone in that tiny apartment, working nights, never dating, never socializing. It's not healthy. I'm fine, Mom. You're not fine. You're wasting your life. She straightened her shoulders. Now come back to the party. Catherine wants to meet you. She's being polite because she's my friend, so please don't embarrass me by talking about janitorial work. We returned to the terrace where the party had grown. At least 60 people now filled the garden, all perfectly dressed, all perfectly comfortable in their wealth and status. Michael. A woman in a lavender dress waved me over. I'm Catherine Rothschild. Your mother has told me so much about you. Has she? She mentioned you work unusual hours. Night shifts, is it? Sometimes. How fascinating. I don't think I've ever met anyone in the cleaning industry before. Her tone suggested this was not a gap she'd been eager to fill. Is it steady work? Very steady. Well, that's good. Steady work is important. She smiled the way you'd smile at a child who'd brought you a drawing. Your mother must be very proud. Across the terrace, Mom was introducing Amanda to a group of younger guests, the children of her wealthy friends, all around my sister's age. I watched Amanda laugh and charm them, watched her casually mention her position at Goldman, watched them lean in with interest and approval. Your sister is delightful, Catherine said, following my gaze. Such an accomplished young woman. Your mother says she's being considered for VP. So I've heard. You must be very proud of her. I am. What I didn't say, Amanda made $400,000 a year. Last quarter I'd made $840 million. But who's counting? The afternoon dragged on. I was introduced to dozens of people, each interaction following the same pattern. Polite interest, Mom's embarrassed explanation of my cleaning business, sudden disinterest, hasty excuses to move along. By 4 o'clock I was standing alone near the rose garden when my father found me. He looked older than I remembered, grayer, more tired. He'd barely acknowledged me when I arrived. Your mother's upset, he said without greeting. She thinks you're being antisocial. I'm being ignored. There's a difference. He sighed. Michael, I know you think we're hard on you, but we only want what's best. What's best or what looks best? That's not fair. Isn't it? Mom literally introduced me as a janitor to a woman whose family name is on half the buildings in Manhattan. You do clean offices. I own them, Dad. I don't clean them. I own them. He blinked. What? Nothing. Never mind. No, what did you mean? You own what? Before I could answer, someone called his name from the terrace. He looked torn, then patted my shoulder. We'll talk later. Try to mingle, okay? And maybe don't mention the night work to anyone else. It's a bit awkward. He walked away and I pulled out my phone again. A message from my communications director. CNN wants interview about fund performance. This quarter's returns are generating serious media interest. Confirm. I typed back. Not yet. Wait for the right moment. Michael Morrison? A male voice behind me. I turned to find a man in his mid-30s, expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive haircut. Everything about him screamed hedge fund. Yes. Thomas Bradford. I'm with Apex Capital. He shook my hand firmly. I heard you work in facilities management? Something like that. Interesting pivot. Most people in FM don't come from academic backgrounds. Your mother mentioned you studied mathematics. I did. Where? SUNY Stony Brook. His interest flickered and died. Not an Ivy League school, not worth pursuing. Well, good luck with everything. He started to walk away, then paused. Actually, do you handle commercial properties? Apex is looking for a new cleaning service for our offices. I don't think we're a good fit. Pity. Well, nice meeting you. He disappeared into the crowd and I felt my phone buzz again. This time it was Sarah, my executive assistant. Sir, the Wall Street Journal is running a profile on you tomorrow. Thought you should know before it hits newsstands. My stomach tightened. Tomorrow? I thought we had another week. They moved up the timeline. Something about competing with the Bloomberg piece. I closed my eyes. This was going to complicate things. By 6 o'clock, the party showed no signs of winding down. If anything, more people had arrived. The younger crowd, the ones who worked in finance and tech, coming straight from their offices in Manhattan. I was hiding in the library, responding to increasingly urgent emails when Amanda found me. Seriously, she said. You're on your phone at Mom's party? I'm working. Working. Right. Checking your cleaning schedule. Something like that. She sat down on the leather sofa, studying me. Why do you even come to these things? You clearly hate it. Mom invited me. Mom invited you because she felt obligated. Because her friends ask about you and it's embarrassing to admit she has a son who cleans offices for a living. Is that what you tell your friends at Goldman? That your brother is a janitor? Her face flushed. I tell them you're figuring things out. How generous. What do you want me to say, Michael? That you're living up to your potential? That mom and dad are proud of you? I want you to tell the truth. The truth is you're 29 and cleaning toilets. I looked at her. My sister, who I'd once been close to before college and careers in life had pushed us onto different paths. Is that really what you think I do? What else would you be doing? My phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. Full volume, echoing in the quiet library. I glanced at the screen, CNN main desk. You should get that, Amanda said sarcastically. Maybe it's your supervisor. I answered. Michael Morrison. Mr. Morrison, this is Daniel Chen from CNN Business. We're preparing to run a breaking news segment on Meridian Capital Management. As the fund's founder and managing partner, we'd like your comment on this quarter's returns. Amanda's eyes widened. I watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief. What specifically are you asking about? I said calmly. Your fund returned 34% this quarter, bringing total assets under management to $12.3 billion. That makes you the youngest hedge fund manager in history to break the $10 billion threshold. Can you comment on your investment strategy? I'd prefer not to comment at this time. We're going live with the story in 10 minutes with or without your statement. This is a courtesy call. I appreciate that. No comment. I hung up. Amanda was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. What, she whispered, was that? A journalist. About a hedge fund. About your hedge fund. Yes. You run a hedge fund. I do. How big? Her voice cracked. He said $12 billion. $12 billion. $12.3 billion as of market close today. She stood up, then sat down, then stood up again. You're lying. This is some kind of joke. It's not a joke. But you clean offices. No. I own office buildings. 17 of them, actually. In Manhattan, Boston, and D.C. The facilities management comment was Mom's interpretation of commercial real estate portfolio. Amanda's face had gone white. I don't understand. It's pretty straightforward. I started my fund 7 years ago with money I made day trading during college. Built it slowly, carefully. Made some good calls during the pandemic. Grew assets under management. Hired a team. The usual. The usual, she repeated faintly. The usual for building a $12 billion hedge fund at 29. $12.3 billion. He sank back onto the sofa. Does Mom know? No one knows. I keep a low profile. Why? Because I prefer privacy. Because I don't need the attention. Because my work speaks for itself. Your work, she laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Your work is managing $12 billion. And we thought you were a janitor. You thought I was a janitor. I never said I was. But you let us believe it. I corrected Mom multiple times. She heard what she wanted to hear. Amanda pulled out her phone, fingers flying. Meridian Capital Management. Founder. Michael J. Morrison. Oh my God. Oh my God, Michael, you're all over the financial news. Forbes has you on their 30 under 30 foot list. The Wall Street Journal called you the most mysterious success story in modern finance. I saw that article. And you said nothing. For years. What was I supposed to say? Actually, I'm wildly successful. Please respect me. That's not how I operate. He was scrolling frantically now. Your fund returned 89% last year. The year before that, 76%. These are insane numbers, Michael. People would kill for these returns. We have a strong team and a solid strategy. A solid strategy, she repeated. You're the biggest success story in our family's history and you call it a solid strategy. Amanda. Do you know what this means? Do you have any idea? I've been bragging about my Goldman salary for years. Throwing it in your face every chance I got. And you make, she looked at her phone doing quick math. Management fees on $12 billion. Jesus Christ, Michael, you make more in a month than I'll make in my entire career. It's not a competition. Yes, it is. It's always been a competition. Mom and Dad comparing us, me being the golden child, you being the disappointment. Except you were never the disappointment. We were just too stupid to see it. From outside the library I could hear the party continuing. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. In here, my sister was having what appeared to be an existential crisis. "We have to tell Mom," she said suddenly. "No. Michael, we have to. She's out there right now, probably telling people about your janitorial business." "Let her. Are you insane? You can't just." A commotion from the living room cut her off. Raised voices, sudden movement. We both stood up and walked to the library door. In the living room, someone had turned up the television. CNN was on, and the cheerin at the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking news. Mystery hedge fund manager revealed." My face filled the screen. A professional photo from a conference I'd spoken at last year. The anchor's voice carried through the house. "Michael Morrison, the 29-year-old founder of Meridian Capital Management, has been revealed as the manager behind one of the most successful hedge funds in history. With $12.3 billion in assets under management and consistent triple-digit returns, Morrison has achieved what most managers spend lifetimes pursuing." The party had gone completely silent. Every single person was staring at the screen. "Morrison has been notoriously private," the anchor continued, "rarely giving interviews and maintaining almost no public profile. But sources close to the fund confirm that this young man, who lives modestly in Queens and commutes to his Manhattan office via subway, has revolutionized modern quantitative trading strategies." The camera cut to a financial analyst. "What Michael Morrison has accomplished is simply unprecedented. To build a fund of this size with these returns at his age, there's no comparable achievement in modern finance." Mom's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering on the terrace stone. Dad had gone completely pale. Catherine Rothschild was staring at the screen, then at my mother, then back at the screen. "That's..." someone said. "Is that Patricia's son?" Amanda walked out of the library, stood in the doorway where everyone could see her, and said loudly, "Yes. That's our brother Michael. The one who cleans offices." The camera was now showing B-roll of my office building in Manhattan. A sleek glass tower in the financial district. "Morrison's fund operates from here," the anchor explained, "where a team of 53 analysts and traders manages what has become one of the most sought-after investments in the world. The fund is currently closed to new investors, with a waiting list of over 200 institutions." 200 institutions, someone in the crowd whispered. Thomas Bradford, the Apex Capital guy who'd offered me a cleaning contract, looked like he might be sick. The segment continued. "Morrison studied mathematics and economics at SUNY Stony Brook, where he began developing the algorithmic trading strategies that would later define his fund. Despite his youth, he's known in the industry as the Oracle, for his uncanny ability to predict market movements." Mom had sat down heavily in one of the terrace chairs. Her friends surrounded her, a mix of shocked and fascinated. The anchor concluded, "Morrison declined to comment for this story, maintaining the privacy that has defined his career. But with returns like these, his silence speaks volumes. This is Daniel Chin, CNN Business." The segment ended. For exactly 5 seconds nobody moved. Then everyone moved at once. My phone started ringing. Mom's phone. Amanda's phone. Dad's phone. Everyone's phones all at once as the news spread through social networks and group chats. I walked out of the library, through the crowd of staring people, and out onto the terrace where my parents sat frozen. "Hi, Mom," I said quietly. "Sorry to interrupt your party." She looked up at me, her face a mixture of shock, horror, and something that might have been shame. "Michael, that was you?" "Yes. But you told me you worked in facilities." "No, I said I managed commercial properties. You assumed I cleaned them." Dad found his voice. $12 billion. $12.3 billion as of today's close. Catherine Rothschild appeared at my mother's elbow. "Patricia, you didn't mention your son was Michael Morrison." "The Michael Morrison." "I didn't. I thought he was the Oracle of Wall Street," Catherine continued, her entire demeanor transformed. "My God, Patricia, do you have any idea how many people would kill for an introduction? My fund has been trying to invest with Meridian for 3 years." "Your fund is on the waiting list," I said. "Rothschild Capital. You're number 47. Her eyes widened. "You know my fund?" "I know every fund on the list. We review each one carefully before opening new slots. Could we perhaps discuss?" "No," I said simply. "I don't mix business with social occasions." Robert Ashworth pushed through the crowd. Michael, I apologize for earlier. I had no idea who you were. Ashworth Industries would be very interested in discussing investment opportunities. We're closed to new investors. But surely for a family friend. Especially for family friends. Thomas Bradford from Apex Capital appeared, looking desperate. Mr. Morrison, about what I said earlier about the cleaning service. You were looking for someone to clean your offices. I'm not that person. Of course I understand, I just meant. You meant you thought I was a janitor and treated me accordingly. Now you know I'm not and you're treating me differently. That tells me everything I need to know about you. His face flushed red and he backed away into the crowd. The party had completely transformed. Where an hour ago people had ignored me, now they surrounded me. Everyone wanted to talk, to apologize, to network, to impress. It was suffocating. Excuse me, I said, pushing through toward the house. Amanda caught my arm in the foyer. Where are you going? Home. You can't leave. Mom's having a breakdown. Dad looks like he's about to have a heart attack. And every person out there wants a piece of you. Which is exactly why I'm leaving. Michael. She gripped my arm tighter. I'm sorry. For everything. 4 years of treating you like a failure. For being condescending. For thinking I was better than you. You were doing what you were taught to do. What Mom and Dad reinforced every time they praised your Goldman salary and mourned my night work. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. But it's an explanation. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I need to go. My team is probably in crisis mode and I have calls with Tokyo and London in 3 hours. Will you come back? To see them. She gestured toward the terrace, where Mom sat surrounded by her friends, all of them talking at once. Eventually. But not tonight. I walked to my car, a 5-year-old Honda Civic that I'd bought used and maintained carefully. It was parked at the end of the driveway, surrounded now by Mercedes, BMWs and Teslas. As I pulled away, I could see people still gathered on the terrace, all staring after me. My phone was ringing non-stop. Journalists, investors, former college classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. I drove back to Queens in silence, thinking about the look on my mother's face when she realized that her janitor son managed more money than everyone at her party combined. When I got home to my modest studio apartment, 900 square feet, kitchen the size of a closet, bathroom that barely fit a shower, I made myself dinner. Pasta with vegetables. Nothing fancy. My phone kept buzzing. Messages piling up. Mom, Michael, please call me. We need to talk. Dad, son, I don't know what to say. Come home so we can discuss this. Amanda, you're trending on Twitter. Hashtag Oracle revealed. This is insane. I ignored them all and opened my laptop. The markets in Asia were opening. I had work to do. Around midnight there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole. Amanda, still in her white linen dress, looking exhausted. I opened the door. How did you know where I live? I'm your sister. I know things. She looked around my tiny apartment. This is really where you live? Yes. But you manage $12 billion. $12.3 billion. Why do you live like this? I gestured to my laptop, the 3 monitors set up on my desk, the Bloomberg Terminal subscription, the shelves of books on quantitative finance and economic theory. Because this is all I need. The rest is just noise. She sat down on my second-hand couch. Mom's in shock. She spent an hour apologizing to her friends for not knowing her own son was the Oracle. Catherine Rothschild told everyone that she'd tried to invest with you for years. Half the party wanted to kill Mom for having access to you and not mentioning it. That's not my problem. No, but it's hers. And Dad's. And mine. Amanda looked at me. We treated you terribly, Michael. For years. And you just took it. Why? Because proving myself to you wasn't important. Doing the work was important. But we're your family. You're my family by biology. Respect has to be earned. She flinched. Have we lost that? Your respect. I considered the question carefully. You can earn it back. But it won't happen overnight, and it won't happen because I'm suddenly successful in a way you understand. It has to be because you genuinely value me as a person, not as a hedge fund manager or a potential business connection. How do we do that? Start by treating me the way you would have if you'd never seen that CNN segment. If you only knew me as the guy who works nights and lives in Queens. But you're not that guy. Yes, I am. I'm exactly that guy. I just also happen to manage a lot of money. She stood up, walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I know I never said that before. I know I treated you like you were beneath me. But I'm proud. And I'm sorry. Thank you. After she left, I returned to my monitors. The Tokyo market was moving. A pattern I'd been watching for weeks was finally playing out. I made 3 trades, adjusting our positions, hedging against currency fluctuations. By morning, those 3 trades would generate $47 million in profit. But that wasn't why I did it. I did it because the puzzle interested me. Because finding patterns in chaos was satisfying. Because building something real, something that worked, something that mattered, that was enough. The money was just a way of keeping score. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Mom. Your father and I would like to take you to dinner. Please. We have so much to discuss. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, Saturday. The diner near my apartment. 7 p.m. Not somewhere nicer? The diner. And Mom? Come because you want to see me. Not because you want to understand my fund or meet my team or impress your friends. Just me. There was a long pause. Then, just you. I promise. I set down my phone and looked out my window at the Queen's skyline. Not impressive like Manhattan, not glamorous like Greenwich. Just regular buildings full of regular people living regular lives. Somewhere across the city, my mother was probably lying awake, thinking about all the times she'd dismissed me, all the parties where she'd apologized for my existence, all the years she'd wished I was different. I hoped she was also thinking about why she'd done it. About what it meant to value appearances over substance, success over character, status over truth. Because until she understood that, no amount of money in my fund would change anything between us. The markets moved. I watched the numbers. And I did what I'd always done. My work in silence, letting results speak louder than words ever could.